Hey folks, welcome to the Shoemakers Academy. I'm Wade, the Shoe Dog, and today we are going to look at the Air Jordan 1 Low. And when I get a new pair of shoes, I really, before we cut into it, literally, I like to, let's do an inspection. And part of the reason I want to walk you through this inspection, it's just a little bit so when you go to buy a shoe, that you know what you're looking for your personal shoes that you're going to wear, but also if you're authenticating, right? So actually, I'm going to close this box again, and I want to show you a couple of things. Number one is how to spot fake sneakers. So this is the sponsor of today's video, is this book. And in this book, you can learn a lot about the techniques of inspection, but also critically items to look for. So if you know what correct really looks like from a quality perspective, then you can start to look at what's actually authentic. And actually, I tell you, once you read this book, you will never look at a pair of sneakers the same way again. You will actually have a deeper understanding of what correct is. And I'm going to show you some of that today. There's a lot more in the book. In this book, actually, we have classic Nike, we have Adidas, we have EZ, and some others, some Vans in here too, and some new and some old, and just for you to just try to understand really what's going on. And we're going to do this exercise by looking at the Air Jordan Low. We actually, in the book, we do the Air Jordan High. And actually, why are these numbers all over this? Well, the numbers are all over this because in our shoe specification course, I actually show you how to create an actual product specification for a shoe like this. Because, when you go ahead and you look at one of these things, you've got to understand what it's made out of. And for our shoe material design book, we also go through the Air Jordans just so you can see it. Okay, so enough of that stuff. Let's get into the shoes. Okay. So first thing, let's look at the box. A little bit torn up, but I want to actually quickly just look at it and see, what it is and where it is, right? So Nike Air, okay, box made in Vietnam. Okay, why do we care where the box is made? We want to make sure that the box matches the shoe, right? And you also want to look at the end label to make sure if it has made in, so it does say Vietnam. Okay, so far we know the box says the shoe's made in Vietnam, and then we'll look at the shoe to see if it's made in Vietnam also. So this is part of the provenance part, okay? Okay, it all says made in Vietnam, fine. And is it important whether it's made in Vietnam or China? Not really. This pair of Air Jordan 1 High actually is made in Vietnam, or is made in China. So do we care? I don't know. Why do we care? Okay, so we've got Jordan 23 paper, and the shoes in here. Is there anything else in the box? No. I don't see any QC sticker or anything. Okay, so that's enough of the box. Nice gold heat stamp. Okay. All right, let's look at the shoe. So first thing that we're going to look at is the shoe clean, right? And we'll just quickly take a look. The whites are white. The black's not dusty or anything. Outsole bottom. Okay, little cardboard crumb on there, but for a high quality shoe to be made in a high quality factory, the first thing is that I look at is the conveyor belt and the equipment clean. Okay, so everything's clean on this. Okay, good. Now we want to look at symmetry, right? When this shoe is put together, are all the pieces in the right alignment, right? And you can start by saying, okay, let's look at the collar line heights. Actually in this shoe, you know what? I'm not that excited, actually. These points actually are not exactly the same height. Now we're gonna look at the outside and just sort of feel for that. Yeah, this shoe, generally if one side feels low, then one side's gonna be high because the shoe is maybe not sitting straight on the outsole. And so let's look at the tail view of this thing. And when we're looking at the rear view, we're looking at a couple of things. We are looking to see that all the vertical elements are vertical, right? And the other thing that we want to look at is is, are the elements that are supposed to be in line, are they in line, right? And when I look at this shoe, you know, I'm not 100%, you know, it looks, you know, and again, this kind of back tab is a little hard to get perfect, but when they're lasting the shoe, these back tabs want to be in the center and straight. And actually, when I look at these, I don't see the straight back tab. And maybe if I had a ruler here, it would be a little easier to show. Let me look here. What do I have right here? Quickly here. Well, we'll just grab a screwdriver. And I'm looking at this, and I was like, you know what? This back tab looks a little rotated. And this one looks a little rotated that way. So what that tells me is that when the shoe is on the last, and I'll pull this over here. If you're interested in making one of these, we actually do have the pattern available. Here's one right here. Here's the pattern, right? These are available, or will be available soon. When you're getting the upper onto the last, you want to make sure, now again, this is board last by hand, not Strobel, but you want to make sure that the upper is not rotated at all. And the easiest way to check that is the center line. Now, this shoe, of course, has this nice back tab, which is a real nice cue. Hey, I do know these are real shoes, right? These came from, where'd they come from? Did I buy them from Nike online? I'm not sure. I know they actually did come from a reputable source. They didn't come from any sketchy online thing or at the, off a blanket at a swap meet. So I know these are real. At least I'm guessing they're real. But okay, so first problem I see is a little bit out of alignment. Now, let's just sort of rotate these. And when you hold them like this, what you're looking to do is just line up all the parts, right? So you get the outsoles, you line them up together, right? You're sitting flat, and then you rotate them together, right? And as you rotate them, you'll see, hey, wait a minute, these parts should be aligning, and I can see that the back tab is not aligned. Okay, that's not great. Now, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put them on the table, and then we're going to look sideways at them, and what we're going to do is we just want to see if all these heel elements line up to each other. And I'll just turn it sideways, and you can see, yeah, vertically, these things all line up. So that's all good. The upper, and that means that the outsole, the upper is all the way down on the outsole, right? When you're lasting this, you want to make sure that your lasting board or your Strobel is right on the bottom of the last. And the heel sometimes can be an issue. But in this case, I can see that they're all the way down. Now, so you said, hey, wait, if you know these are all the way down, then how can this collar line be a little off? Well, the upper could be rocked a little bit left or right. So that's what could cause this collar line to be a little bit, all of a sudden one side's going to be a little high and one side's going to be a low because it's a little bit twisted. Yes, that can happen. All right, so, hey, are these big problems? No, they're not. But this is part of when you really look at a pair of shoes closely, you can see. If I was buying these in a shoe store, would I send them back and say, hey, bring me another pair of the same size so I can check it? You might. This is not a huge issue, and it's not really going to affect the comfort of the shoe. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so we've identified that issue. Now we're going to just roll the shoe together, and we're just going to look and see. And as we're looking for alignment of these pieces, the other thing that we're going to look at is, are all these colors the same, right? If this was a natural leather shoe, like natural leather or natural suede versus a pigmented surface, then yeah, you really want to be careful to make sure that all these colors match. But because this is just black, white, and red, it's pretty easy color match. So yeah, all the colors match, the textures match. And the other thing is when you're looking at now these all have actual leather texture. If you're looking at a shoe that maybe has man-made texture or some more aggressive pebbling, if the factory's not careful, or if it's fake, the grain direction might be going in a different direction, and you'll see like something looks wrong, right? So that's one of the things you can sort of look at. The other thing that I'm looking at here is is stitching colors, right? So we have red stitching on red, black stitching on black, and white stitching on white. Great. That's per the design. And that's something that you can look up on StockX to see, should it all be matching stitching? Okay, no problem. The other thing that I'm looking at here is these edges. All this shoe actually has a lot of labor in it, and this Air Jordan High, same situation. You can look at all of the edges are rolled, and actually this DIY one here, you can see all the edges are just cut straight, right? None of the edges are rolled over. You know, if you want to if you're making it yourself, it's of course 10 times easier to just cut the pieces. Rolling them over takes an incredible amount of work to do that, but hey, look at the kind of shoe it makes. Beautiful, right? If rolled cleanly. So when I look at all these rolled edges, they're nice and smooth. This one's not perfect, but again, this is kind of a complicated area where the leather is bumping over two different layers. But when I look at all these other rolled edges, they're really nice. The only edge that's not rolled is the edges of the back tab. Okay. And actually the swoosh edges are are not rolled. All right. But from the exterior wise, you know, these shoes look great. Now we're gonna look at the bottom, and in the bottom, the same thing. You really just want to look at, you know, is the logo look correct? Does the texture look correct? Do the colors match? Is it clean? All right. Some shoe models, Vans in particular, they have a little mold code molded into the waffle of the outsole, so you can see, you know, what country it came from, or sometimes what factory it came from. As I know Nike builds Easter eggs and tells into the shoes, and I can't get my friend at Nike to tell me what any of them are. Maybe you can put in the comments, but I guess as soon as the fake factory knows what the Easter egg is, or what the fake, you know, what the trick is. You know, I see a little booger here on the rubber here. You know, maybe that mold's starting to wear out a little bit. It's possible. But generally, actually, the rubber parts on this stuff all looks beautifully clean. When we're looking at these rubber components, one of the things too is we want to look at the parting line. And the parting line is where the two halves of the mold, right? The halves that, and I'll just pull this out for example, where the upper part of the mold, which is white, and the other color break, the other color part, this is the outsole that we have available here. And this is where the mold splits. So they mold black on one side, white on the other, and then they put them together. This parting line, what you want to do is make sure that there's no rubber bleeding over. And you want to make sure it's clean and straight. And the other thing you want to look at is a well-made mold. These edges kiss together perfectly, right? And you can see there's almost no parting line, because when you put these two together, sometimes there's a little bit of flash, you know, where the rubber sort of squirts out as they're molding it. In a really high quality tool, you're going to see this parting line where the two pieces of mold metal meet is super close. You know, in a cheap mold, you'll be able to see, you know, maybe a half a millimeter or a millimeter, and sometimes you'll see a little rough trimming. You know, when I look at these ones, you know, these shoes may have been made out of the same piece of equipment. Actually, I know they're not made out of the same piece of equipment, because this came from Vietnam, and this one came from Vietnam, and this one came from China. You know, Nike has enough money. They probably have 10 sets of tooling to make this design. So you don't really have to worry about that so much. Okay. So these parting lines are beautifully smooth, and there's no rubber color bleeding over. And when you look closely, you don't see any paint, because sometimes there'll be paint to try to obscure the fact that there was color bleeding. I don't see any of that. And also the texture really looks beautifully uniform. You know, that's one of the things too, that cheap equipment often has a lot of extra texture on it to cover it. You know, in this shoe too, you can notice that the texture stops above the stitch line, right? So that's just one of the features. If you're really looking closely, yes, you see the stars in the sort of the medium sandblast or the rest of it, but notice there's no texture on the top sidewall. Why they do it that way, I don't know. It looks nice. Okay, we won't argue. All right. So pretty good. Now, if I was buying these shoes for myself to wear instead of chop up, I would want to go look inside. So that's what's next. We're gonna unlace these, and just like if you're in the store, do this. Get the tissue out. Usually, a lot of Nikes have a cardboard form instead of paper. Does that mean it's real or fake? Hard to tell because they do both. Okay, so let's get those out of there. Let's open that up. And I'm just going to back off the laces a little bit. Okay, so first thing, what we're going to do is you're going to just get your hand inside. And what you're going to feel for is any bumps or creases. Just start to feel along the edge of the footbed. When you have a shoe with channel stitching, if this channel stitching is not in the correct location or the footbed's wrong, that channel stitching will be above the level of the footbed and you'd feel it. So in this case, even in the toe tip, it all feels good. So I'm gonna just check the perimeter inside of these, and okay, we got the sticker. I'll get that out of there. Thanks. And we'll just feel all along the edge. And what we want to do is you want to make sure that the footbed is flat and wrinkle-free and in the right location. Now, this footbed is just, it's foam and it's been glued down. So you want to check to make sure that they glued it down straight. And also that it's not off to the side or forward or backward. So these footbeds look like they're in pretty good. Now, you're going to run your hand along the inside of the upper, right? Up inside the vamp. Now, the closing seam on this shoe is generally here. So this is a good area to feel on the inside because you want to know, when they did that closing seam, did they do it clean and nice? And because this is as the shoe bends, you don't want that area grinding on your foot. So it's a good idea to check those out. There's a little bit of a bump there, but of course, there's so much going on right here that if you were going to redesign the shoe, today, you might not have all those areas coming together at the same point, because actually this does make a little bit of a bump, and it is a little bit of a sensitive spot. So you got to be careful on that one because you can feel it. It's there, but it's part of the design. Because these edges are all rolled over, it makes that situation a little worse. And when we open up the shoe later on, we're going to look at that area to see, because there may be an opportunity to, when you roll those edges, to flatten it out and not roll the edges under the overlay here, so you can save yourself a little bit of a bump. Okay, so what I want to do now, this is the shoe I'm going to save. I'm not going to cut open, but this one we are going to eventually slice open. So I want to go ahead and pull the footbed out, and we're just going to peel it up. And it's a lot of these cases where they put a lot more glue on the heel and they slip the front in and put the heel down. So if you can get your fingers in underneath the front and pull it back, then you have a better chance of getting the footbed out, without ripping the foam. Or actually, in this case, we ended up tearing it up pretty good. So sorry about that, folks, but that's what happens. Okay, so sorry about that, footbed. We got more for you. So in this case, these threads hanging out here, that's very typical. We'll just get the rest of that foam out of there. We've got more footbeds to replace that with. And the other thing that we're going to see here too is, you see this little hole. And what that hole actually is kind of to stop any air from getting trapped when they're doing the assembly operation. So, okay, what do we see inside this shoe? We see this white stitching around the edge. So this sort of zigzag looking stitching here, this is strobel, and this is when the upper is made. The bottom is open, and then the last thing you do is you take a piece of fabric that's this shape and you sew it together. This is board lasted, where this piece of fabric is attached to the last and you wrap the upper over it. So that's one way to make it. If you're hand making it, you're going to make it this way. In the factory though, this is how they make it. Okay, so we can see that it's strobel, and then we're just going to actually, just now that we got the footbed out of there, we're just going to sort of check to make sure everything's nice and smooth. So this strobel fabric actually has a little layer of foam on it. makes the shoe a little bit more comfortable. Not bad. Nice touch. Back of the tongue looks nice and smooth. This has a heat sealed logo with all the information on it. Now, what I like about this shoe too is the lining components are zigzag together, and you can see on the high top one, same situation, where the collar lining meets the vamp lining. It's all zigzag together, and when we cut this in half, which is just about now, we're going to get a better look at that. So let's unlace this. Now this shoe, and I know this is the classic look. It has a like a 110 or 200D nylon lining that's a little shiny. You know, it bugs me that it's a little bit wrinkly, but you know, that's just kind of the style, I guess. All right. So let's just get the laces out. Okay. All right, so actually right here, now that we've got the laces out, you can see where the tongue's attached, and they attach it the whole way across, so that's good. It's not going to come out. But when it's attached all the way over, the backup stitching is all the way on the side, so you don't end up with like a bump right on the top of your foot, which is pretty nice. That's the best way to do it. And also you can see where they haven't rolled that top edge, so you can actually see the edge of the material, right? And you can feel that it's actually real leather in that case. Okay, so let's start with this. Now I usually use sort of a heavy duty pair of scissors because I know I can get a nice clean cut, and we'll just start. You know what, actually I'm not gonna. Let's use our Chinese factory scissors, and these are deadly sharp, and we'll just try to go nice and smooth. Yeah, sorry folks, this is what happens. But yeah, you know what, if you want to learn about what goes into these shoes, then you know, we might as well stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, I know we didn't talk about the quality of the embroidery. It looks pretty good on this, as I say as I'm cutting through it. Now let's just use a big old hobby knife here and make sure that your blade is locked, and we'll just get into it. Okay, and we'll go into the vamp. Okay, you know, if these were rare, obviously I wouldn't be doing this, but since this is a pretty bog standard shoe, then it's not the end of the world that one pair goes away. And let's just try to do this carefully without cutting our fingers off. Here we will keep going, and we'll just get through it. Okay, all right, okay. So now that we're looking inside here, let's see, which side do we want to reserve? Okay, we're gonna reserve that side, and we'll start picking this side apart here. So, all right, we'll get that foam out of there. Okay, so like you said, we've got the padded Strobel, so you can see that black foam, and we can see, even though, you know, you've got a full cup sole, the airbag is hidden inside. Now this shoe, I'm always surprised when I look at these that there's nothing in the front. So the only thing you have in the front is this footbed foam, and it always a little bit surprises me, because you'd think that for a shoe that costs so much money, there'd be a little bit more padding in the middle of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line here quickly, and we'll just make a quick cut here so that we can get a look at really what the whole cross section of this shoe looks like. Okay, so all right, look at that, just that piece of fabric, we'll just cut that out of there. Okay, so here we are. You've got your footbed foam, your padded Strobel, your airbag, and your rubber. Now you'll notice that the airbag is surrounded by foam. So how is that made? Well, if you're familiar with Air Jordan construction or like the Air Max, you see that the airbag is buried in the midsole, and this is made with liquid PU foam, liquid polyurethane foam. And in the factory, that urethane foam, it's almost like toothpaste. They squirt it into the open mold, they click the airbag in, it's held by pins, and the foam expands around it inside the mold and surrounds the airbag. So you have the airbag that's trapped in this little foam block, and then you can put it into the cup sole. But you'll notice, yeah, right, there's nothing in the forefoot. It's just footbed, the padded strobel, the foam padding on the strobel board itself, and then the rubber outsole. So you're right on the ground. So now we're looking at the inside of this, and we have about, looks like 10 millimeters of tongue foam. This is also polyurethane. Yes, it's the same material as this, but the amount of air trapped in here is a lot higher, right? This is like 90% air, and this is like, whatever, 20% air. Okay, and now what I talked about earlier, how the lining zigzag together, that's nice and smooth. And you can see, actually, let's flip to the other side of the shoe, because here you can see the lining is all continuous. On this side, you can see the lining is continuous. Yeah, and actually, just like the high top one, the tongue material is all the same, and it's zigzagged into the vamp. Okay. Now, the other thing that I notice here is that there doesn't look to be too much toe reinforcing. So the toe on the shoes is quite soft. All right. That's not good or bad. It just is. You'll notice too that they've got foam all the way down the vamp lining. So basically, there's a little bit more foam on here. There's a little bit less foam in the sidewall here. This is just woven fabric. And you can see there's only just 1 or 2 stitch lines that go all the way through the shoe. And this is that area that I said that Nike probably should look out for. And this, let's look at the other side of the shoe too. This area, I'm not that excited about. This could be better. This actually could cause a problem. So, hey, overall, great looking shoe. There is a little bit of an issue here. And just like I said, where all these layers come together and they've closed the upper on top and they backed over it, and this is what you end up with. I don't know how well you can see that, but all those layers come together, and then there's a little bit of back stitching. So there is a little bit of a nugget right there, and not great. Hey, yes, I'm not telling Nike how to make shoes, but there are areas there, little things that you see here and there that probably could be better. Now let's look at this shoe. They've actually, on this one, they've actually cut out some of those layers. So there's a little bit less. And actually, you don't feel the same bump on that one. So, yes, roughly the same design, made by different factories in different countries. Things will be slightly different. Even though they're all made by Nike. Okay. So inside, generally, the rest of this is beautiful. When I'm looking at this heel counter, I see that it's a molded counter. It's got a nice shape to it. This shoe has a nice hourglass. You can feel a little bulge, so you know that this counter was heat molded at one point. Doesn't look like it was injection molded. When you look for injection molding, what you're looking for, actually, you know what? I take it back. This is injection molded. What you're looking for, and whether you injection mold or not, you can still form it beautifully, whether it's injection molded or not. But the injection molded counter, and we'll look here. The injection molded counter will be a consistent thickness. The injection molded counter will have a variable thickness, right? The top will be thin, and it gets thick, and it gets thin toward the bottom. If it's just sheet cut goods, it'll likely be the same thickness all the way through. Maybe they've skived the edges. This one looks three-dimensionally molded, so it's nice and thin where it's got to be sewn through, and it has a little bit more meat where you need it secure, and then it gets thin toward the top so the shoe's not so stiff, right? So that's the best way to make it. And if you're making millions of these, which Nike is, then they can afford to open injection mold by size to make sure that these things are all beautifully shaped. So yeah, when I feel this heel pocket, yeah, everything's nice and smooth. The foam, the lining, everything is all nice. Not a wrinkle on it. The way they've stitched and turned the seam here looks good. Sometimes there can be it can get a little bit messy because you've turned this lining into the shoe. It can be a little bit messy right here. The high cut one, I do remember there was a little bit of it's a little bit more complicated than this one due to the shape of the eye stay. But you see sort of the cut edge of the foam, which is not great. In this case, it actually looks pretty good. Yeah, see, this is where the mud guard comes around and it goes underneath the bottom eye stay here. And even this edge is rolled over. So all of a sudden you've got basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of material right in that one spot. And this is right where this gets backed over. You can see where the stitching's backed over. So 5 layers of material with one stitch line, or, with a pair of stitch lines underneath it and then one backed over it. Yeah, that's a lot come together. So when you're designing a shoe, you really want to try to avoid stuff like that if you can, or if you know it's there, then take some steps to mitigate. So yeah, Nike, they didn't roll over the back edge, but they did roll over this top edge. And actually, as that comes under, they could actually stop the roll right there to make that area a little bit thinner, smoother. Hey, again, I'm nitpicking, I want to be, we want these shoes to be perfect looking and perfectly comfortable, but okay, there's some challenges due to the design. And I know it's an old design, but you can do some things as you work on the production run. Now, actually, as I look at this, there's a little bit of over glue on the sidewall. And sorry, I know I'm skipping around. So over gluing is when you're gluing you're preparing the upper for gluing, right? And you'll put the outsole on the. I'll just show you what happens here in the factory. So before you've glued everything together, you're going to have your upper and your outsole, and they'll usually press it together, and they'll take a pen and they'll mark, right? And they'll use invisible ink, right? And then you have this line, and on that line you're going to buff, right? To make sure the leather surface is a little rough or glue, and then you're going to glue up to that line. And any glue that goes over that line is called over gluing, because then it appears above the level of the outsole. Now, under gluing, you don't want that either, because that means that the edge of the outsole could sort of peel away. But you want to be careful not to have over gluing. And when you're making shoes at home, you can actually tape it if you want to, and you can go really slow and be careful not to get glue above that line. In the factory, they're going quickly, so here's a little bit of glue above the line. On a shoe like this, where every other detail looks pretty well buttoned up, just a little bit of glue like that. Okay, here's one thread, part of a thread. This should have been melted off. They have a machine that kind of looks like an industrial blow dryer, and it would hit that thread and just melt it. And this one too, I don't see any over gluing on there. So, like I said, from a stitching and a cutting and an assembly, these shoes are fantastic. I mean, this, again, it's a very simple, easy shoe to make, except all these edges are rolled over, which is a real, labor intensive operation. But generally, the rest of the shoe looks pretty well put together. Again, one little spot here that could be improved. And this is what we say is a commercialization issue, right? The designer just drew it that way, but it's really up to the developer to make sure that when all those pieces come together and when the shoe is manufactured, like the sample room, maybe it was okay because they spent 2 minutes hammering it flat. But on the assembly line, who has time for that, right? So a little bit of it could be improved. And again, I'm not going to tell Nike how to make shoes. That's just, if we're trying to we want our shoes to be perfect. And as far as a design and cosmetic and iconic brand, iconic shoe, this is about as close to perfect as you can get. But there are some things here that aren't 100% right. And actually, now that we start looking at this really closely, I'm looking at the swooshes here, And yes, that black line across is correct. It is what it is. That's part of the iconic part of it. You know, they do the same on this shoe. You can see the white line crosses the black swoosh. Cool. But what I don't like on this is some of the stitching here. It gets and again, this is not an easy part to stitch, and some of these parts are done by computer. But when it gets a little close here, and a little bit more space here, and then a little bit close here again. I mean, this is part of when I look at fakes. You can see how terrible the lines are. Actually, if you look in this book, one of the things we show you between the real shoe and the fake shoe, and actually, let me see where that is. Let me see, because we looked at some really terrible versions of this shoe. Where's that page? I guess that's the first one we looked at, huh? We looked at some really terrible versions of the shoe, and what they had done on the stitching for the swoosh. I mean, just rough cutting and really terrible stitching. So yeah, that's one of the things that generally you look out for. Yeah, this is a real shoe. You know, the fake shoe, do they actually take time to put an airbag in it? Hey, some they do, actually. Some they do. But in this case, yeah, this stitching could be better. You know, and again, yeah, this is hard, no doubt. The rest of the stitching looks pretty good. And again, these are all rolled edges, which makes that operation even more difficult. But yeah, that would be my only other criticism. So in general, hey, you know, Nike makes a great shoe. These are not expensive or fancy the way these shoes are made. Yes, there's a bit of labor to do all those rolled edges, but again, hey, you know, Nike generally makes great looking shoes, and their build quality is second to none. And I know they take a rap sometimes for you know, they're always the poster child for labor and all that other stuff, but generally, you know, Nike's actually a company that really cares. They have policies for labor relations and quality and workers' rights and all that stuff. So definitely, you know, when you're buying Nike, you are buying shoes out of the best factories with the best conditions. Okay, so that's it, folks. Just remember, you know, if you want to learn more about authentication and quality, you can check out our book, How to Spot Fake Sneakers. If you want to learn more about what goes on inside these shoes, then I would definitely check out the Shoe Material Design Guide. Hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for visiting shoemakersacademy.com, and stay tuned for the next one. If you enjoyed this video, and I know we went on for a long time, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please visit the website if you want to learn more about the business, how to make shoes, how to get into the shoe business. Then that's what we're here for. Come and visit us. Thank you very much.